Hi, Janet. How are you?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you.
Good, good, good. It seems like time has just literally flown since we last spoke.
Well, I can't believe is it March tomorrow?
It is, yeah. No leap year, shortest month of the year. Doesn't
Oh,
feel like the shortest month of the year, but it is. Nice to see you with our very large cup of, oh, look,
cheers.
we're matching colours. In
Yeah,
fact,
mine
you
says
you
good
totally
morning.
blend into everything that your
Yes,
curtains, your top, everything's
I
perfect.
like I like to be colour coordinated.
Mm. So, how are you? How have you been? And how is orthopedics?
Oh yeah. So I don't think I'd even started back at uni when we last spoke. We were still kind of in the holiday stroke admin period of university for year two. So I've done 2 weeks at university, and in which time we've started a couple of assignments, and and then I've just done a week of the orthopedics ward last week, which was really good. It's an interesting place. A lot of the care is post-operative, so people are coming back from their operations. These are elective operations, so they've had hips, knees, elbows, sometimes other things. There's the odd back operation. So the immediate care is post-operative. So that's kind of a whole set of care skills just around that of helping people recover from anaesthetics, and the first few hours of recovering from serious bone taking apart and putting back together again.
Yeah, it's really quite traumatic, isn't it, as
Yeah,
surgery?
yeah.
And are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. There's a lot of different people on the ward. Once people are awake, there's a lot of time spent with physiotherapists, occupational therapists, other disciplines. So that's really nice. Working alongside of them as they get people mobile again. It's very much the way these days, isn't it? That when you've had that kind of operation, the advice is to be up and out of bed and moving. So
Very quickly, isn't it? Really quickly. I
uh,
always remember that. Was that something that you were aware of, or were you quite surprised by that?
no,
Or
I think I was aware in terms of having heard anecdotally that people that I knew that had happened to them, but seeing it actually when you go from a person who's come out of theatre and is very much asleep, and then the next morning, it's like looking at a different person sometimes. Straight away they're a lot brighter, they're a lot more alert, but also the physios are there, and they're assessing already the success of the operation, and helping people to mobilise and to move, and they're making plans for when they go home and stuff. So seeing it firsthand is different from hearing about it anecdotally, the same as it is with everything. But it's really eye-opening in lots of other ways. I did my first catheter the
oh,
other
well done. Oh, well done. Yeah, that's always quite a rewarding thing, isn't it? Both for the patient and yourself, of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know,
a female catheterization. Yeah,
yes,
so
yeah,
much easier. But
yeah,
oh gosh, what, and I think the other thing that's really interesting with orthopedics is you can really get involved with pain management.
mm,
Because as we were saying, it's a very traumatic. A lot of the procedures are quite traumatic. It takes a bit of recovery for the body
yeah,
generally. But of
yeah,
course, like you so rightly say, they're trying to mobilize people within 24 hours. And
yeah,
so with all those things going on, pain management is really important, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, 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 yeah,
But
and that has been good because the pain is it's a bit of a philosophy, really, isn't it? Pain management. You've always got a patient who maybe doesn't like taking medication and
yeah,
has that kind of theory that they shouldn't need medication, that for whatever reason they don't want it, and it's nobody's given anything unnecessarily, but there's a real sense here of using resources to the patient's best advantage. So, uh, when people are saying they're in pain, you don't want them to soldier through that pain. There are things that we can do to relieve that pain, and it's for the long-term benefit. Because I had this conversation with a nurse practitioner, and she was saying that a patient who's in pain won't move that injured limb. They won't get mobilized. So that's detrimental to their recovery. So using pain relief in the most appropriate way, that's the best thing for that patient. So that's really good, because as a student, you kind of I've still got that fear really that medication's a powerful thing, that there are side effects, that it needs to be properly monitored, and all of that's absolutely true. But in that situation, pain relief is our friend. It's going to get this patient up and about much more. It's going to make them less afraid to move those joints that they're a little bit reluctant to move. So it's I'm learning about the responsible use of
That's a
drugs
really, really
managed.
interesting thing to say. It's very true. I know what you mean. So many people. I think maybe it's kind of a very British thing as well, that lots of people are very stoic
Yeah,
about
yeah,
medication. And
yes,
obviously, like you say, that's a really good thing, because as we know, there's a lot of medications that can become addictive, etc. But this, I always see it as it's a little bit like an educational piece for patients, that you're actually offering them something in the short term to
yes,
get them through, and
yeah,
then they're open to lots of other options for them to manage pain that won't be as invasive for them. So, but
yeah,
it's just getting them over that hurdle of 48 hours. It's all kind of new,
yeah,
isn't it? So
yeah,
it's fascinating. Anyway,
yeah.
we could talk for hours just on this subject, but this isn't our subject today.
No, not sorry.
And that's absolutely fine, because you know what we're like when we start talking. We could literally, this could just be an ongoing event forever, really, couldn't it? But today I wanted to talk to you about kind of well-being and self-care as the piece that we're going to discuss. But if you don't mind, I want to just go back to our initial conversation that we had when we first started talking, that you felt so passionate about this particular topic that you were looking to do this for your dissertation next year.
Yeah.
So I wondered if we could just start with the dissertation part,
Mm.
because it's a really big thing to go through, and I just wanted to get your take on where you were at, why you were starting to look now in your second year,
Mm.
and what that involved and entailed for you, and then kind of the support and the resources around it. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, yeah. Well, sorry to disillusion, or to lighten the drama of the dissertation, but we don't actually do a dissertation anymore. What we do is it's called a service improvement assignment. And
Oh.
I mean, I remember from doing my degree the first time round, I did do a 10,000 word dissertation, and it took over my life. Um,
Which is why I was kind of asking you the question, really.
yeah, but certainly with my institution, there's still a big emphasis on the project, and it's going to be amazing. Other people, I've heard about other people's work over the last few years, and they've done some amazing service improvement assignments. And the aim is to try and be creative around, I guess they realise that we are new eyes, we are new legs entering wards. We see things, we bring other skills to the wards that from our previous work experience and everything else. And very often when you're new onto a ward, the questions that you're asking is, why are you doing that way? Or why is that thing done like that? What's the significance of such and such? And with that comes the ability to maybe see new ways of doing things. The people who've been there for a long time, they don't see those things as easily because they're doing the day-to-day. Whereas when you can come in and you can question with a bit of naivety sometimes, what's the benefit of doing it that way as opposed to a different way? This is what they're looking for from students, is for students to say, well, I think I've got a really good idea about how we could make that better.
That's so good.
Yeah, and it can be literally any aspect of
Wow.
what happens on a ward. I mean, I've had loads of ideas around there's always things that you could do to improve medication administration, and this is what's happened year on year. We've refined the process. People have had good ideas about that's where the red bibs came from. The ones,
Yeah, the lanyards
yeah.
that most people would ignore that you were wearing
Yeah, well,
and still come up and ask you a question. But yeah, the idea was there. I mean, certainly that's why. Do you know, I actually had no idea. I just thought it was still, I kind of want to say, a little bit heavy, evidence-based,
yeah,
research-based,
mhm,
lots and lots of articles, going to specific sites to get your articles, and then like kind of doing a response to that. But you
yeah,
know what? I absolutely love that because I think it's totally solution
yeah,
focused.
yes, yeah. It's about being an innovator and an entrepreneur, and yeah, all of those things that you just said, they're all still there in the assignment. It has to be research based, and it has to be theory driven up to a point. But then there's just this little spark of creativeness that they want from nurses to
Fantastic.
put in something new. Obviously, we're not kind of going to market with the ideas, but having said that, great ideas have come out of
Yes,
these
of
assignments
course.
and
A
have
great idea has to start
yeah,
somewhere, doesn't
yeah,
it?
exactly. Yeah. You can imagine that during the COVID stuff, there's been loads of ideas around hand gel and infection control and loads of that sort of stuff. But for me, I'm coming at it from the point of view that our greatest asset, our greatest tool, our greatest piece of machinery on the ward is the nurse. So my angle is really, what can we do to really make sure that the nurses are looking after themselves to the best of their ability? Obviously, it's not just the nurses, it's the other people there too, but I'm representing nurses. So I want to really try and focus on the fact that if we don't look after that asset, then that is going to affect the care that we can pass on to patients. So and it's not that I want it to be a dramatic thing, because I don't think I can turn us into what's the word, robotic nurses. I can't make us superhuman in that sense, but tweaking some of the little things that we do that kind of get in the way of us being able to perform at our best. That's what I'm interested in looking at. You know, when we are talking about fueling our bodies, are we fueling our bodies with the right things? When we're talking about, are we mentally prepared? Are we mentally strong enough to do this job day in, day out? And what can we do to improve that? Is it that we nurses know a lot of the health messages, but do we put them into practice? Do we have the opportunity to put them into practice? So this is why I wanted to focus a bit more on that for my dissertation, for my piece of work on this. I just think there's so many different things that you could do, really.
Oh
There's
my goodness, you've really touched on such an important topic. As you know, one of the things that we do here at Nurses.co.uk in the academy is that we're looking at supporting retaining staff.
Mm,
And self-care is actually a module within our coaching program because it's been identified as one of the things that is a challenge in terms of retention.
yeah.
So all of this, it's all woven through. There's a kind of a golden thread of well-being all the way through. And I know you and I have previously had conversations about the fact that nurses are so good at looking after their patients.
Mm,
In fact, I think I read a statistic, 68% of them, however, would put their patient safety and self-care and well-being above their own. Now, I know there's lots of reasons for that, but I think our takeaway from our previous conversations around it have been that y- they're really good at looking, we're all really good at looking after people, but we're really not that good at looking after ourselves.
yeah.
And it always comes back to that wonderful kind of simple analogy of the oxygen mask in the airplane, that even if you had your children or your nearest and dearest around you, you wouldn't be able to support them until you supported yourself. And it's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing. So
Abs-
it's a really interesting topic. So tell me a little bit more, because if it's research based, etc., I guess you're going to have to get quite a bit of data. So have you considered doing any surveys or anything like that to see where people are? Or have you not got that far? Because I know you're just starting to look at it, aren't you? It obviously doesn't need to be ready until next year, but
Yeah, yeah. That's right. We'll do this in year 3, so plenty of stuff to be getting on with in the meantime. But I am thinking along the lines of what do I need to do for my evidence based, and I'm actually toying with the idea of there are surveys that I could do with nurses, and possibly I might do that. But I'm also toying with the idea of doing a bit of a diary of mine based on every day that I go to placement, because I'm thinking that possibly one of the things that I might cover is actually the amount of sugar that is on the ward, because I have a real bee in my bonnet that sugar is not our friend, and yet we use that. So many professions use it as a crutch really to get through the day, and we don't even realise that we're doing it. And so I'm actually tossing about the idea that on a daily basis I might do a bit of an inventory around the wards.
I think that's
Collecting.
a great idea. And if you can get other people to join you with it as well, because at the end of the day, it is a poison, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah, yeah,
marketed to us. You
yeah.
know, there's a huge industry on
Mm,
selling us bits and pieces. And interestingly enough, until we tell patients and their families otherwise, they
mm.
don't know what else to get us to say
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah,
apart from biscuits, cakes, and sweets. Which, don't
yeah.
get me wrong, is really kind of
Mm.
them,
It's
but
lovely.
it's not
Yeah,
serving us. And
no.
of course, as you know, when you're feeling like you've had a really hard morning for you, and someone just all of a sudden opens a box of a certain type of sweets that have come in all different colors and seem to have some quality about them. Um, that you're in your head, you're kind of saying, "Oh no, I don't need that because yeah,
Mm,
I'm watching this, or I don't need that."
mm,
But it's so easy when you see other people diving into the box. You think, "Oh, sod it." I
mm.
probably shouldn't say
And
that word, but anyway, because it's all about willpower in the moment, isn't it? And it is really, really hard. But you'll know that
mm,
you'll just get a hit,
yeah,
and it'll last 10, 20 minutes, and then
mm,
you'll get the slump again as the
yeah,
glucose is going through your
yeah.
bloodstream.
Yeah, for me, it's the mindlessness of it that it's just so, I've done this so many times where my hand is in the box before I've even made a conscious decision to put it there. And,
Whose hand is that?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I eat the sweet, and I don't those sweets when sugar was brought to the masses, it was meant to be a treat
A
and an
treat.
emotional
Yeah.
thing and something that was really special. This is you going back to when your grandma and grandpa tell you stories about the only sweet thing they got all year was the orange in the Christmas stocking. And we are just surrounded by this stuff all the time, and we don't even enjoy it to the extent that we're supposed to. It's like you say, it's just a sugar hit, and when we get that slump in our energy, we interpret that as a cue to get another one.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is the danger, you
Yeah.
know. One sweet on its own, one chocolate is not an issue, but how many of us realistically
Yeah.
stick to one?
Yeah.
And that's the issue. And we do it without even thinking. It's a proven fact that when people keep food diaries, they don't include a lot of the stuff that they eat because they forget they've had it. So
Mm.
if you don't write things down at the moment you eat it, if you do it at the end of the day, this has been done many times. All those little incidental bits don't get put on a food diary because your brain doesn't even seem to acknowledge that it's just not a big enough event to remember. So when people are talking about what they actually ate, they're not even fully remembering what they have
I
eaten.
know, it's crazy. And if you wanted to take it a step further, I know sometimes there's a little bit of education around it for some people, but there is also that whole um, thought of, or maybe in days gone by, there's somebody be cooking toast and you could
Mm,
smell it and you think, oh,
yeah,
I want toast.
yeah,
Or I don't know, you'd go down to the canteen, or not necessarily the canteen, maybe the hospital shop or whatever, and all they've got is crisps
yeah,
and
yeah,
sandwiches, which,
yeah,
as you and I both know, eventually is turned into the carbohydrates turned into glucose. So it's ending up with the same result as
yeah,
as the packet of sweets or the whole packet of chocolate digestive
yeah,
biscuits, because they will have the same effect, won't they?
yeah.
But I think that's part of the reason that the sugar is targeted at us, because it's very difficult to have just one.
Mm,
It's actually giving you a kind of dopamine.
yeah,
It's a reward.
yeah,
So your body is then constantly looking for more of it because it knows that your body thinks, "Oh, that's fantastic. Really like the result of that," and
yeah.
until 20 minutes later. So it's a really fascinating. I would definitely do a sugar diary for you if that would be useful.
Yeah, that'd be
So
wonderful.
we could do it. We could do it together as we go, couldn't we,
Yeah,
over the next
yeah,
year?
yeah. We could.
I would be really interested in knowing. Well, I'm wanting to actually take it out of
Mm,
my diet totally for all the
mm,
reasons that we've discussed.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
And I
So
thought,
I guess sometimes when you're doing something like this where sugar's concerned, it's about replacing it with something else.
mm,
What would you do to do that then, as a
well,
way of gratitude from families and
right.
patients?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, interestingly, I was speaking to a nurse on one of my other wards, and she said to me, we were discussing this sort of topic, and she said to me that a patient had said she didn't know what to do other than bring the chocolates in, and this nurse had said to her, "Well, how about instead of doing that, thank you very much, but instead of doing that, how would you feel about sending us a thank you card?" Because it was a personal message. It was directed at particular members of staff. They could name particular things that they were grateful for. It lasts a lot longer than the chocolates does.
Absolutely.
It's a real bit. I mean, we know this, don't we? How much of a boost that is when patients take the time to actually voice what it was that was special about their care. I mean, we do this with the surveys that we do on the wards. There's always a survey going around it, and a lot of that is about numbers, but also it's very much about what is it about the care that what things do patients want to say that they specifically enjoyed that really made a difference to them on a daily basis. So when she said that, I just thought that's a great answer, isn't it? It's
So
when patients
simple.
are looking for a personal thing to do for the ward to say thank you. That is it. Just to be able to say that you provided great care for my relative, that for me that would be any number of chocolates really. To have that on the wall for the rest of the year and for it to be a massive wall filled with cards, and often there are those notice boards in the hospitals that I've been in the wards I've been in, those notice boards are full of thank you cards anyway. But if we encouraged patients and family members to do that more, just how colourful would that wall be, full of cards and thank you messages, and also highlighting the things that the patients really appreciate.
I absolutely love that, Janet. That is a great, great idea, and it would really would lend itself to all the work that you're doing in the service
Mm.
improvement agreement. Definitely,
Yes.
I think the other thing that would potentially work with that as well is that it would remind nurses that they could potentially use that kind of documentation as
Mm.
part of their revalidation,
Yes.
as long as, of course, it was anonymized,
Yeah.
or it just said from Pat or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
to Sally from Pat, or whatever it was, because I don't think there's enough thank yous that are said, and that would be a really beautiful way to
Mm.
collect that.
Mm.
And it would make people feel really proud and
Yeah.
valued and
Yeah. Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
And we know with our retention work that feeling undervalued is like the major reason why people are leaving the
Mm.
profession.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, wow. I mean, I can feel a movement coming on.
Yeah, I feel like there's a campaign that you could do around that with posters and stuff. Say, just gently reminding relatives that if they want to say thank you, this would be a great way to do it.
This would
We,
be a real treat.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
I'm
you
sure
just
there's a
you
whole,
could do quite a lot on the words, couldn't you? So
yeah,
from,
yeah,
it's a different kind of treat. A treat
yeah,
doesn't always have to be a
yeah,
sweet or a
yeah,
gift. It's
yeah,
a treat to feel really good about the work that you
yeah, yeah.
did.
If you want to give
L-
someone a lift, this would be a great way to do it. I'm sure the marketing bods would come up with some great slogans around that.
And do you think, obviously without saying where you are, do you
Mm.
think your trust would support you as an idea with that?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure they would. Yeah, because the trusts are very much in favour of what they can do to support nurses and other staff to be healthy, and to feel good at work, like you say, to be seen, to be appreciated. What that would be doing would be it works on so many levels, doesn't it? It's not just the trust saying that they're interested in the welfare of the staff. It's giving the patients another voice, which is so important these days. We recognise how important the feedback is, and always looking for fun opportunities to encourage that feedback to come forward. And I think maybe it might be more enjoyable from the service user's point of view, to rather than a bit of a stuffy questionnaire about on a scale of 1 to 10. This is just an opportunity to say thank you in a more creative way. I'm sure there'd be lots of mileage in that sort of thing, really.
Absolutely. Like you say, feeling supported by the environment that you work in, and having a visual display of that's
Mm.
colourful and relevant, and was always growing.
Yeah.
Um, I just think that's a wonderful, wonderful. Oh, that's really, really exciting, actually. And I know when we've talked previously about kind of the well-being piece, you said to me that we needed to be very careful on how we put that across so that it wasn't yet again another um, directive that nurses felt that they should be doing it. You had to recognize that everybody was different. Everybody needed something different. When we're talking about the fuel that you mentioned, the sleep, everybody's sleep patterns will be different. There's so much learning in each one of those things just to work out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So there's so many things there, aren't there? But it's just going back to what you had mentioned. How do we make it so that it's not another tick list to be completed or another unsurmountable mountain to climb of things on our to-do list? How do we make people taking ownership of their well-being as a exciting, important part of their work?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I'm not even sure that I know the answer to that. What I do know is that it's very easy to just add more pressure to people when they're already under such a lot of pressure. Balancing home and work and long shifts and heavy shifts and family life outside and it can all there's a lot of pressures on nursing staff these days, not just on nursing staff, on other professions too. But I really feel that there's ways that the messages are delivered sometimes that adds even more pressure. Like I was reading a booklet that was issued by a trust on the health and well-being of nurses, and it was very well intentioned and there were some very good messages in there, but still there was kind of an implication in there about how much exercise you need to be doing in a week, what kind of exercise it needs to be. It needs to be this really punishing HIIT stuff these days. I mean, HIIT saves time, but it's very hard on your body, and kind of the underlying messages that maybe nurses are getting that they don't even realise they're getting is that they have to be working harder, that they can't just go home and relax, that you have to be going home and doing exercise, you have to be going home and producing these amazing meals and having this perfect family who all go out.
Yeah, you're so right. So it's like super nurse, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun, with a
I
cape.
like this.
Yeah. No, you're so right. There's a very fine line between trying to help and making things much more difficult. And I think comparisonitis, as I always call it, it's actually not a disease that you and I would treat, but it should be,
Yeah,
because it is out there, particularly because of social media and the way we live our lives. But
yeah,
comparisonitis is the thief of joy. It literally
yeah,
just it overwhelms you. It stops you in your tracks, and it makes you just think your self-worth and self-esteem is down on the floor. So
yeah.
that doesn't help. I think it always goes back to finding what works for the individual. And rather than, lots and lots of exercise, just, I don't know, can you park your car a little bit further away?
Yeah.
If it's safe at the end of a shift to be able to walk to just it's always the little things
Yeah,
that
yeah.
add up into the big things. So,
Yeah.
but it has to work for that individual. They have to look holistically at their whole life and
Mm,
how all the pieces slot together and how they can just create the little nudges that
mm,
drive them forward in small ways. It's very much around the work that we do with our coaching. It's finding out what works for what matters most to people about their well-being, because one person's choice will be totally different from another person's, but then it's giving them the tools to make that accessible for them so that they do feel like they have a little win,
mhm,
um,
mm,
even if it meant, they started doing, I don't know, some kind of lunges or strange little kind of exercises while washing their teeth. There's a good reason why that also helps, because it's a habit that's already formed and you're layering another habit over. But just little tiny practices that shift.
Yes. Yeah, things like realizing actually that when you're on the wards, I was with a student the other day and we worked out that we walked 16,000 steps in
Wow,
one day.
that's well
Right?
over 5 miles.
Yes,
It's about 7 miles, isn't it?
yes. So the 10,000 steps a day thing, lots of nurses are already achieving that, and maybe they don't realize they're achieving that. But equally, when you're on wards, sometimes I see people jumping in lifts, when they could be using the stairs. Very simple win that is. And if you want to make it really hard and get some lunges in there, do 2 steps at a time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's all possible. But again, it goes back to the individual, because their mindset might be saying to them internally, I'm absolutely exhausted. I've just done, I don't know, 3 long shifts in a row. I haven't got the energy to be able to go up the stairs today. But again, it's about energy management. It's about what else can you shift so that you leave the space for that, and then start creating that on a daily basis. So you look at the whole, you're not asking people necessarily to add things in. It's about being involved with what they're already doing and making space for it. So it's very interesting. I think this is such an interesting topic, isn't it? And something that we feel that it really does need to be addressed, but it isn't a blanket situation. Everybody's different, as I've said. But I do wonder, I'm going to say this out loud, I do wonder if our compassion fatigue and our burnout that is just ripping through the nursing profession. And I know COVID has compounded it. There's no shadow of a doubt around that. But I just wonder if we had the opportunity to go back 3 years, let's say, were we looking at ourselves, looking after ourselves well enough before then, so that we minimized the risk of that happening? Or were we eating all the sugar and the sweets and not getting the rest and not eating enough of really valuable components in our diet that would give us the energy and the motivation and the inspiration to be, I don't know, kind of a better version of ourselves? Have we compounded the problem ourselves?
Yeah.
And there is a possibility that that is the case, because it's the same around building immunity and musculoskeletal accidents at work. If you are really overweight, your core is not working the way it should be, and maybe you're overweight because actually you are anxious and you maybe got an underlying depression sitting there. And that's why the comfort food and the chocolates that call out to you are a good option. So there's so many movable pieces, Janet, aren't there? It's getting to the bottom of what really matters to people and where they're at, and how they can be supported to make small little incremental changes that move them forward.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, there are fundamentals involved in what we're talking about here. I mean, we are talking on one level of the day-to-day results of small actions, but we're also talking about fundamentals of why a nurse is so tired, why a nurse is working such long shifts, why are they working so many shifts back to back. Why is it that every shift feels like an uphill climb? So those are fundamentals of the nursing world, which we aren't going to solve, but I still think we can have an opinion on whether this is a good way for people to have to work. But another one of the fundamentals is when we're talking about weight issues and welfare and depression and all of those interlinked things, is the one for me with the weight is one of the fundamental things is actually that we sometimes I feel like we concentrate on the wrong thing, and it all links in with the sugar debate, and that we focus on losing weight, and lots of people are quite prepared to admit that they would like to lose weight. But this happened to me a few years ago, that I wanted to lose weight and I was really struggling with how to do that. Felt like I'd been trying to do it all my life and never really succeeding. And I had a little bit of a breakthrough when I did a lot of reading for myself. And what I found was that if I switched my focus from losing weight to managing my hormones, then the weight came off anyway, because what I was doing was I was addressing the real root cause. You know, weight gain is not, it's not the illness in itself, it's a symptom of something else. And for nurses, this, I really believe that there is this link, but when you put sugar and stress together, then you end up with an even worse combination, because the body is dealing with stress at a molecular level with the use of hormones, and things like our insulin levels and our cortisol levels and our adrenaline levels, they are all working with that sugar to ensure that that sugar goes into our fat reserves, and that's when we've got a problem. So when we talk about diets and how to lose weight, I'm really fascinated by this idea of the calories in, calories out thing, because that just simply does
Does
not
not work.
it does
No.
not tell you the full story,
Yeah.
because we all know that person who seemingly eats 1 million calories and is stick thin. We know that person
Yeah.
exists,
Yeah.
but how do they exist? And the point is that the reason why they're able to do that is because their hormones are working in a different way to what my hormones are working in. You know, and so
Yeah.
when I got to know my own body a lot better, and I started to focus more on things like stress management and sleep management, then suddenly the diet side of it all became a whole lot easier. And I wasn't even concentrating so much on the food diaries or anything else or the calories. What I was trying to do was to get my body into a healthier place by thinking about what are the things that are triggering my cortisol and adrenaline hormones. What are the stressful situations that I'm putting myself through that I can find different ways to deal with through meditative methods, through gentle exercises like the yoga, the walking. I did a lot of walking at that time, not running, walking,
Yeah.
looking at the trees, listening to the birds,
Fantastic. I
working
absolutely love that. Yeah, me
on the
too.
ways to reduce the cortisol. And suddenly the weight issues started to resolve themselves
Yeah.
without me even noticing.
So
And
powerful, so
yeah,
powerful,
yeah.
so powerful that as part of our ACT coaching training, which the ACT is the Academy Coach Training, so that's for nurses out there in all the trusts where their trusts actually decide that what they want to do is they want to have those nurses trained in-house by us so that they can deliver coaching to the rest of the teams. One of the components that we're putting in is it's kind of around like your chemical romance, if you like. Not the group, obviously, but looking at exactly what you've just said. So yes, you know, let's just take serotonin, which everybody knows is the happy hormone, and it is generally the hormone that gives you that feeling of well-being. And yes, you can get it from bananas or dark chocolate. And also meditation is particularly good for that. But I want to give nurses and healthcare professionals kind of chemical hacks, if you like, life hacks, little tiny things that they can carry in their backpack. You know, that's obviously they won't have that on them, but that's just metaphorically speaking. So, for example, if you want to increase your serotonin, if you do twists, which is obviously good, very good for your waist anyway, but just a short, sharp amount of twists carefully, or golf swings, anything like that, where you're moving, it actually helps to release the serotonin in your gut because that's where it's manufactured. So just doing that for, I don't know, a minute and a half or two while you're in the corridor or in the lift is enough to change your whole chemistry.
Right.
And I do appreciate that there's a lot of things within that. It's kind of a new learning, but it's simple
Yeah.
and it's something that anybody can do at any time. So we're going to put quite a lot of focus on that. And then also we've got these wonderful masterclasses. So we've got a fantastic clinical psychologist called Dr. Vicky Barnes that has written a book all about kind of positive happiness. And she has done a masterclass for us just for nurses on self-compassion. And then we've got another one coming up with Isabella Natrins, and she has written a book about how we use our food, the real food solution, it's called. So it's eating the right kind of foods, like you say, that play to your strengths of
Yeah.
what you need. So it's asking your body every morning, so what do I need today? I noticed that I was triggered by that. That's okay. I'm only human. I can be triggered, but let's just unpick that a little bit and work out why and what is it I need to do for myself in order to reverse that? Because actually, we have all the tools at our disposals for our mind, body, and soul. And that's one of the things I feel quite passionate about, like you do with well-being, that we need to support nurses, particularly at this time, to get across. So, wow. So going back to the sugar diary,
Mm.
give me an idea of thinking about triggers. Do you want that kind of depth where if I was to reach for that colourful sweet, what was I thinking before and what was I thinking after? Do you want to go into that, or do you just literally want to know?
I think actually that would be too much depth because in many ways I don't even for me it's about that chemical reaction. It's not the psychology so much. A lot of the reading that I did led me to conclude that the current way of thinking is to psychologize a lot of dieting, to say it's to do with your head, it's to do with how you think about food. But for me, what I read between the lines with a lot of that is that that actually puts the onus back on us, to feel that we haven't got the willpower to not pick up the sweets, that we haven't got the right processes in our head, but actually the chemical reactions going on be in your insulin levels, particularly, that is more the reason why we are reaching for those sweets than too much of the psychology. I agree that the psychology is there, but I really question the extent of it, and not enough for me is being placed on the actual the biochemical responses to sugar, like we were saying, the sugar peaks and dips. So I am personally much less interested in what people are thinking before and after, because now I feel like we're driven much more by these chemical urges, which that takes the onus off us, to have that conversation with ourselves about whether we're strong enough or not. For years, we've been told that losing weight is about willpower. I really don't believe it is. I believe it's because we put things into our body that cause chemical reactions to happen that we then don't have any control over. It doesn't make us weak or bad people that can't avoid chocolate.
Yeah,
It
I
means
hear what you're saying.
we've
Yeah,
through a chemical process that's
yeah,
stronger than our willpower.
yeah.
That And I want that stick that we beat ourselves with to go away, because every time we beat ourselves with the stick that we're not strong enough, that we're gluttons, that we're greedy, that makes us feel even worse.
Yes, you're
And
so
then
right. Yeah.
even more for this stuff that we shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And that also leads to that whole conversation that I just mentioned as one of the masterclasses is self-compassion.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it's the language and the stories and the narrative that we tell
yeah,
each ourselves even, and
yeah.
each other for that
And
matter.
each other, yes,
Yeah, because it's easy to say it out loud, like, "Oh my God, look at me just going for another biscuit,"
yeah,
So, and everybody can have a joke about it, and then everybody feels better, and then you don't feel so bad. So, but yes, it's very, very, very relevant, really important. You just have to give me some guidelines when
yeah,
we
yeah,
finish
yeah.
as to what you want with the diary. But I think it's really, really powerful. I definitely feel that this could be a revolution, for nurses. But I think more importantly, it's an opportunity to help patients relearn
Mm,
that we're in a healthcare setting and
yeah, yeah,
environment, and we really, really appreciate their thanks, but we're
yeah,
going to give them other options to
yeah,
demonstrate that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
really powerful. Oh, well, my goodness, we've been nattering away as we do with our cuppers for nearly an hour. So, brilliant. I've really enjoyed it, Janet, as always. Thank you.
Me too.
And next month, because that's tomorrow, but it's going to be a month away, we're talking about COVID, aren't we?
Oh, that thing that we can't get away from it, can we really? It's like, it's
Well, we're
still there, isn't it? Still.
2 years in then when we talk about it. In fact, the week that we've got booked to talk about it was the week that we moved house. We just slid in under the front door off the week of lockdown. So that was pretty crazy. But I think it's a really important topic. We will do like a reflective piece on it and see what our takeaways are, what we feel, we've learnt,
Yeah.
and how that's affected nursing and the future of nursing. And I'm also really fascinated to learn a little bit more and for you to share with our audience why you chose to become a nurse
Mhm.
when we were in COVID. So that will be really, really good.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Like I say, it'll be a very reflective time for me, because COVID has changed my life in lots of ways. I know for lots of people, it's changed their life in very bad ways. And at one point, I was kind of on the receiving end of something not great delivered by COVID. But at this point in time, I just feel like the changes for me are now for the better. And I'm a different person to what I was 2 years ago. And I'm sure that lots of other people would agree with that. So yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
an
be
interesting.
really good because I know there's a possibility that we could feel like doom and gloom
Mm,
rehashing it all, but we'll try and put a positive spin on it and see what
yeah,
what where we've all come through it and what we've learned from it and how it's impacted not only our ability to be great professionals as nurses, but as people.
yeah.
So I think that will be really, really good to share. All right. Well, thank you so much as always,
No,
and
thank
have
you.
a
Thank you
really good
for
um,
watching.
rest of the day. And I shall catch up with you really soon.
All right, then you take care.
Cheers. Cheers.